Welcome back for another book review. Today we're talking about this one. So this is Celtic Myths by Bill Price. It is a relatively small book. It comes in at a whopping 145 pages. So needless to say, for the brief description, this book is brief. So the premise of this book is to briefly tell you kind of a summarized version of the myths and then a little bit of like historical context for said myths. He's just kind of giving you like an overall of like what is Celtic, and I do tend to agree more with this author than the Who Were the Celts book that I did last year, I think it was. I feel like it was last year. I don't think it was 2022. I talked about it at one point though. That book was trying to like say Celtic was basically all of Europe, like all the way down to Spain, and just basically everywhere was Celtic. This is more like, nah, it's like specifically like up towards like the modern day like UK regions, like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, like that general region. And that makes way more sense. He talks a little bit about that. He talks about the history and just giving you some basic context of like, you know, myths don't really have a timeline, but you can try to, and like there's some sacred sites. Like there was one, I think it was in Ireland, that was like a hill of Tara, butchering words, but like trying to give you the context of like, well, some of the things happened here, so like it's kind of a spot, but overall it's just a very brief introduction to it all. I'm being very gracious with this and acknowledging that a lot of my ick comes from the fact it did not fulfill what I wanted this book to do, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 star. I'm heavily disappointed by this book, but it's not necessarily because the book is bad, it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. So once again, when I'm coming to these books on mythology, I want what Neil Gaiman wrote, but for other ones, because that is what I want when I look at mythology. I don't care about the historical context. I don't really care who wrote it and when and what was going on in society around them at that point. I don't care. I don't care what specific manuscript you're pulling this story from. I don't care. Tell me the story. And the problem is when we have that with modern books, with modern witches and pagans talking about it, the problem is we get the romanticized history, which is also kind of a problem because, you know, the great goddess theory, you know, just and even then it's still usually a very summarized myth, and it sucks. Tell me the myth. Don't summarize the myth, because I can read summaries online. I don't care. Half the time the summaries actually tell the story, like from blog posts, better than like these kinds of books. And so that kind of leads to my point, which is the intended audience for this is not necessarily for witches, which we kind of assumed, right? I mean, this isn't giving off witch vibes. And it's not from our usual publishing houses. So this is really for like the academically inclined people who want like a brief intro into what Celtic is. I do feel like it did better than the Who Were the Celts book, but it also doesn't actually really tell you the myths, it just summarizes them. So would I buy this book? Absolutely not. I'm not here for the academic side of things. I just want to have stories to be told to me. Tell me the story of the gods. Bring the story to life. And he talks about how the mythology changes throughout time to like reflect like the people and like the situations they were in and whatever. And it's like, cool. Could we do it in the modern times? While in the past they might have changed like the tools and stuff that they were using to make it, you know, more reflective, like chariots and swords and whatever. Why not like how we do nowadays, where it's like, again, my favorite example, that Persephone was the victim and now it was her choice, and that she didn't want to just be Demeter's daughter. That's an awesome way to relook at that myth. There are plenty of others we could start to explore, but we don't. We get summaries that are not fun. Because again, Neil Gaiman brought the myths to life. The summary does not. It leaves you very just like, oh my god, it's just another like a history textbook that you had in high school. It doesn't bring the characters to life. It doesn't bring the world to life. If you're just telling me the events that happened, that's not a good storytelling technique. And like, that's not what these books are setting out to do, which I understand, but it bothers me. I want to find those books. Tell me the story. Do not show me the story. Tell me the story. Just Like, I want to feel like Neil Gaiman, you could totally put that audiobook on and sit around a campfire and it would be awesome. Like, that's how I want to read about mythology, is like make these stories feel like you could just sit around like our ancestors did around a fire and they're telling you the story of these gods. It's awesome. The stories are freaking cool. How you make it boring is really sad, because again, the stories are awesome. You just need good writers to take the story and make it interesting in our world. Like, you don't need to make it fit into a modern world. You don't need to have Thor with a fucking iPhone, but like, you need to like be able to take that story and not just have it translated to where the sentence makes sense because languages, but like actually make the story come to life. And these books, this one and like a lot of the other ones, they don't do that. It's just so flat. You're just so bored. Some other notes about this book is that there's no conclusion, which I was really surprised for this being more of like the academic-y style of a book. And yet here we are, no conclusion. We're just like suddenly learning about the Welsh and then just boom, here's the notes and you're like, okay, bye. Again, it's a random pet peeve, but I really don't like when we don't have like an official like goodbye to a book. And really just overall, this is just, it's a really small book and it really didn't have a lot of information. It had some, but a lot of it I was really confused because I don't know the area. And like a lot of this kind of works off of the idea that you kind of know what's going on. And I'm just sitting here wondering, like, I don't know if I have a lot of people from the UK who watch my videos, but like if you stumble across this, if you were raised in the UK and you went to school in the UK, are you taught these things? Like, maybe it's because I'm an American and we're not taught your history. So like, we're taught ours. We're not taught yours. And when we learn European history, that's a lot of history to cover. So like, it's not a lot. And like, it doesn't go to like pre-plague history. It goes to like world history, which is even more history to condense into 1 year of study. And so like, we don't get to know these things, but we get to know our history quite well. You know, you learn your state history and then the country history, and then like you branch out a little bit as you go up. But we learn a lot about like here. Like, I know a lot about Utah history. Like, we learned about the tribes and like the type of housing we had, like for the tribes that lived here, and like how it varied within our state. And like there was a lot of like history, and like you learned about the pioneers and how they came and like the technology they had. Like, you learned the history of what happened here. We didn't have that for here. So like, I don't know, like, is that things that you were taught? Because that's a lot more history to learn. Because like, even here in like my general area, the tribes that were around this general vicinity, there was quite a few tribes that are just like gone. Like, they went extinct like hundreds of years ago. There's like nothing. They just like kind of just like bloop. Don't know. Did they immigrate into like other tribes and just kind of slowly disperse? Massive war. Like, a lot of the like native history is really rough because America. So like, I'm just curious, if you were raised in the UK, did you learn your history like this? Like, did you learn these places? Did you learn the events? Did you learn the people? Like, we had to learn for here. Again, here in Utah, we had our history and then the country history, and we don't have as much history. We're a very young nation in comparison. You know, like when you're looking at this history versus here, it's like, we're just like a blip in time. So like, you have a lot more history to cover. So I'm curious, like, is this just like stuff that you've learned since like kindergarten or whatever your equivalent would be? And like, you've just like learned this stuff so that this is just like a refresher course? Because as an outsider, it's like, I am so lost. It's like, I know that Wales exists. That's cool. That's a place. Doesn't tell me anything else really. Like, these books are really not great if you are an idiot like me and you don't know the area and you don't want to sit there and pull up Google Map to figure out where the F is this. Like, it doesn't particularly matter. I don't even know if I'm ever gonna go over there. But like, it doesn't give you the context that they're thinking they're giving you, but also like, I don't know, maybe it's just if you lived there, you would learn it. And again, the mythology is so summarized that it doesn't really help that much either. It just, overall, this was just a book of brief. That's all this book is. So like, if you have a basic understanding of it, if you have a basic understanding of the myths, it's like kind of cool to like dive in a little bit. Maybe like a good introduction, but it's really for like the more academically inclined. If you were picking this book up to be like, oh, hey, I want to know about Caradwen. I want to know about Lou. I want to know about the Mark. And no, this is just no, not the book. Like, I have witchy books that are probably better that are still not great. Like, there's just better books, and this is just not it. For the Witches, just probably no. It's, again, academically inclined. So anyways, that is going to be it for this book talk. I would love to know your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. If you have a book that you really enjoy that feels like it's telling you the myths and not like telling you the myths, for just like summarizing the myths for the Celts, for the Irish, for the Welsh, I would love to know. I did learn in this book that the Scottish and where was it, like math or man, something with an M, and then like I'm assuming somewhere like Britain-ish. There are words I don't know, but general regions over there, that their mythology is like all just not there. It was just not recorded. It's been lost. Like, it was interesting, like this book mentioned that like a lot of the manuscripts were taken over because and lost because the Vikings were like, it's fucking paper. Like, we're here for valuables. Paper's not valuable. So like a lot of it was pillaged and plundered because the Vikings didn't kind of care when they came over and were raiding and stuff. And I'm like, that kind of checks. If you're invading a place, you're not really worried about like protecting like random paper, especially back in the day. So anyways, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments down below. A huge thank you to my patrons. I have a new one. Hello, hi, thank you. And if you want to support me and get access to exclusive content, I've got a bunch of stuff going on. I am trying to do my own variation of telling some myths. And at the rate that we're going, I'm feeling like I need to just pick like a story and then just tell that story and like try and make it not suck. Because again, I want to bring the myths to life. I'm not just gonna say that I'm a great storyteller for that, but I want it to exist. So we're trying over there on Patreon. As always, a huge thank you for watching my videos. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I post every single day, even if days like this where it's super late because I had to read 2 books and shovel and write. And yeah, but I also got over 50,000 words into my book, so it's going great. Anyways, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.